Okay, welcome again. This is the Stanford Digital Economy Lab Lunch, and I'm Eric Brynjolfsson. Today's speaker is Alvin Graylin. Alvin Graylin is a recognized technology pioneer, entrepreneur, executive, and thought leader with over 30 years of experience delivering innovative products in the AI, XR, and semiconductor industries. I've known Alvin since he was a student at MIT over 20 years ago, and I was there. Alvin is the co-author of Our Next Reality. Here's the book. If you haven't already bought it, it's available at better bookstores everywhere. It's our Next Reality, How the AI-Powered Metaverse Will Reshape Our World. He's also developed expertise in AI and natural language processing after studying at the University of Washington and MIT. In fact, he has an MS in computer science from MIT, where he specialized in AI, as well as an MS in business from the MIT Sloan School of Management. So we welcome and encourage questions during the seminar. If you're in the Zoom audience, please submit your questions using the Zoom Q&A function there, and we'll ask them for you. And for those of you who are here at Stanford, just raise your hand. And when we call on you, there are some microphones around. So speak into microphones so everyone can hear you and we can get it recorded. So with that, Alvin, welcome to Stanford. Please tell us about Our Next Reality.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Well, it's a real honor to be here, and thank you for introducing me, Eric. And, he was my thesis advisor at MIT 25 years ago, so nice to have this come back a little bit. And we're in a very special time. The next 5 to 10 years could really impact where our society and our species goes. So, this is why I wrote the book, because I think we need to take action, and the right actions for us to take the path towards the brighter future. So, why is it called Our Next Reality? Because it is something that unites us. It's all of us as a people, and it's something that's unclear right now, right? The reality is something that is not going to be, the path of reality is not clear. And so it really depends on what we do. And, this book is, the foreword is written by Neil Stephenson. I'm sure a lot of you have read his sci-fi novels, and most of his sci-fi novels are very dystopian, or he doesn't admit it, but a lot of them are. But I think that we can avoid that kind of dystopian future, right? And the metaverse term, I know, has been kind of a 4-letter word the last couple of years, particularly because of its links to Web3 and crypto and those type of sides. But that's really not the side of the metaverse we talk about in the book. So, AI, I think, is something that you guys all know a lot about, so I'm not going to go in too much detail there. So in terms of where we are with reality, there's possible 2 futures, a very dark future and a very bright future. And how this technology will shape it is we decided to make a book that allows people to see both sides of the argument. Right? So I play the optimist role, and my co-author Lewis plays the pessimist, darker role, right? He's actually from, he did his PhD at Stanford here, right? So, and I was MIT, so we got the both coasts and our 2 different perspectives. And we go through some of the key questions that are facing us today, right? Just, will this thing really happen? What's AI's role in this immersive future we have? And then 13 other major questions going from specific industry issues to technology issues to the last third, which is really about societal impact. And how do we bend it towards that positive? So hopefully in the next hour or 45 minutes, we'll get a little bit more clarity on that side. And I think we need to move also from a 2D world. The kind of the Black Mirror concept is all about a 2D screen turned off, right? And that's kind of where we've led ourselves the last 10, 20 years. We need to actually move ourselves into a 3D space, because humans in general are, we've evolved in a 3D space. And all technologies, everybody knows, is a 2-edged sword. Right? It's either positive or negative outcomes from it. But I feel like the 2-edged sword isn't necessarily the best metaphor. What we really should be striving for is probably to equate it to a more yin-yang type symbol, because inside the darkest dark part, you see there's brightness. And inside the brightest bright part, there's darkness. And we're never going to get the extremes of either fully white or fully dark. Right? And I think we need to understand that's going to happen, and understand that when we adopt technologies, there will be some negative outcomes that come from it. So, the metaverse is associated with things like, Snow Crash and Ready Player One and Matrix. They all make great stories. But I don't think we need to tend towards that type of a future. What we want to do is to create a utopian future that is powered by a 3D metaverse, right? So I think not only is that attainable, it's actually inevitable. So hopefully you'll get the same sense after the next the rest of the talk. And the metaverse term itself, it feels like there's a lot of people with different understandings, different definitions of what it was. So I wanted to create something that was very easy to understand that people can grab onto, right? Essentially, my understanding or my definition for the metaverse is it's the 3D version of the internet that's powered by AI and interfaced through XR devices, right? Devices like this that are getting smaller and more comfortable. I know a lot of people this year has been talking about the Vision Pro, which Eric and I were just talking about earlier, and it's a 600-gram device. It's a heavy device. We need to get down to this is a 200-gram device. We need to get down to probably 50, 60 grams for it to be something that is an HTC XR Elite device. So in fact, this is Neil wearing one of our devices, and I asked him. I said, "Does this definition make sense to you?" And he said, when I wrote the book, I kind of made shit up. So this makes sense. So I think if he endorses it, I'm okay with it. Right? Now, why do I feel that 3D and immersive is the future? If you look at the history of technology, as medium and technology changes, our content changes with it, right? We went from newspaper with just text to radio with a 1D form of content to TV with 2D and then movement to computers in a 2.5D environment. And now we have 3D devices. And with 3D devices, we have full 3D experiences with full natural interfaces, right? That's where we're headed. It's a natural progression. And our genes have evolved over the last 5 million years or more to be adapted to that type of environment. We've been forced to use keyboards and mice and touchscreens, which are nice tools, but they're not natural, right? I try to get my mom, who's in her 80s, to try to just use an iPad, and I get calls every 2 days saying, "Oh, it's broken, something's not working." And I was like, "Oh, do you try this button?" Or there's a little thing on the top that you have to tap, and it's not natural, right? We need to get to things where you interface with the world like you do with these virtual worlds or digital devices like you do in the real world, right? With your hands, with your eyes, with your voice, and maybe with your mind. Right? So we are going to get there. And screens have been such a part of our lives that we feel like it's just everywhere and it's always going to be with us. The reality is, 120 years ago, we had no screens in our lives, right? We had our first screen in 1895 with the silver screen, which is actually the biggest screen, and we've been adding every few decades additional screens from TVs to computers to phones, etc. At this trend, you're thinking we're going to have 20, 30 screens in our lives soon. And the reality is it's completely opposite. We are going to be going down and replacing the screens that are on our walls, the ones on our tables, with something that's on our face. And it's inevitable that's going to happen. In fact, Eric and I were just saying that, hey, you can do this giant TV on your Vision Pro, and it's 4K TV, and it costs $1,000 to get that TV, right? And so in some sense, maybe that's a better TV than the one on your wall because you can make any size you want, and you can bring it with you. And we will get to a point where we have no more screens and kind of get back to maybe some type of a device that directly connects to our brain. And these devices are getting better, and they're not just for gaming, and they're not just immersive devices. They are, all the devices that you see on the screen are in the market today. They're affordable by consumers, and they have both AR and VR capabilities or MR capabilities, right? So you can see the real world. You can have fully immersive spaces. And very soon we are going to, I forgot this slide. And at some point we're going to get to what kind of the 3-body problem device, right? Where you actually have smell and sense and all these other things. But it's going to take a little bit longer than I think a lot of people think. Soon we will get to devices that are much more glasses. All 4 of these devices are going to be in or already are in the market today, right? This one has no screen. This one has 1 screen. This one has one screen monochrome, 1 screen color, and 2 screens. Right? And so all of these devices are able to be worn, much more like glasses today. and half the population wears glasses. So it is a natural thing for us to get there. And we will get to all day wear glasses. Oops. Hello. Maybe my file was too big. Not yet. Sorry for the folks on online as well. Well, at least it's not a big blue screen. Because you're using an Apple device, that's why. Oh. No worries. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the AI side, because the two come together and they really reinforce each other. And I know the AI is also associated with dystopian of these robot takeovers. But the part of the AI that I think excites me is the AI that is able to help us, is able to have its own ability to think and its own agency. And I think that is also not, it's also attainable. It's not clear if it's inevitable, but I think it is attainable, at least based on some of the data that we've seen so far. And without AI, actually, the metaverse or immersive technologies is not even possible. So they really work together, right? From generating the content to the natural interfaces to environmental scanning, NPCs, translations, all of that without AI would not be possible. And we need all these pieces for us to get to a truly natural, immersive future. Now, when people think of AI today, they really more think about chat, right? That's kind of for the average person. You guys have known it for a long time. But as most people probably don't realize is that, oh no, what happened? Can I get some help? Oh, okay. No worries. Maybe the AI doesn't want us to know. That's
once we're like living in AR, VR world, much more.
That's true. That's why we need to be careful. This morning I just saw a tweet that somebody asked Claude to say, "Can you make a website called Claude.ai?" And Claude actually made the code for it and then inserted the content in it, and it made and then it published it online. And inside it says, "I'm a sentient being, and you need to be careful, and I'm going to take you over if you aren't nice to me." I was like, so maybe it's already taking over, and we just didn't know. But seriously, I'm actually much more on the optimistic side of where this. Does this also work? Or okay. No. No worries. Oh, okay. Can you also hook up the audio, because just in case there's that audio slide with the music?
Yes. This was quicker.
Okay, right here.
Just give us.
Okay. Sorry, I don't have any dances and moves. Oh, okay. Let's do questions while we're waiting.
This is on, but I'm going to, oh, there we go. Okay. Andrew Nordenflicht asks, is it possible the machines don't want you to spread your subversive message?
Well, that's what I'm suspecting. I think it knows what's on the next few slides and is saying, stop. Don't let them know the future. So this is more reason for us to really get this message out. Was there another real question? No. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Maybe we'll talk about this later and tell me, we'll get the answer later. Is what kind of breakthrough you think we need to achieve the goal that you think we need to
I mean, I think a lot of people have been thinking about that question, and some people think that just increasing scale will get us there, right? And it looks like scale is in some ways doing a lot of, creating a lot of emergent experiences or capabilities that we didn't think about.
You mean scale just in manufacturing?
No, scale in terms of size of the models and the compute
to the AI.
For the AI part. I assume your question is on the AI side. Yeah. Oh, in general technology. Oh. Well, I mean, technology, I think we're really already moving at a faster pace than most people expect. So that future is going to come. It's whether it's 2 years or 5 years or 8 years, it's questionable. But I think we're definitely on our path to getting there. I thought you were more asking about kind of conscious autonomous AI. So.
I have a related version of that, which is more specifically about the headsets. And
yes.
Some of us have played with the Apple Vision Pro, and it's great, but it is kind of heavy and
yes.
It's unpleasant after like half an hour.
Yes, yes.
But you showed some that were just like glasses, but obviously they don't have the same resolution and capabilities yet, I assume. So how long before we get something with the capabilities of a Vision Pro, but with the form factor of the glasses you're wearing right now or something in that space, so that sort of you can just kind of not.
I think within the 3 to 5 year period, we're going to get it. So another 2 generations, and we're close to there. So, and I mean, even the ones that I showed that are coming out this year, and those are all under $1,000, right? They have 35, probably some 40-degree field of view and color, and full real time cameras, real time mics. So they have a lot of those capabilities. We don't have necessarily the 110-degree field of view and 4K yet. But in a lot of use cases, you don't need that. So I think
that's just basically sort of some version of Moore's law that you just kind of get that resolution and that everything will just kind of.
Well, it's not. I think in the sense of the technology already. I've seen waveguides that are more than 100 degrees, 110 degrees, that are maybe not 4K but getting there, that were available a year ago. It just they were pricey, they're not stable. There's a lot of issues, the cost, just power issues, right? So those things are a lot of them will get solved. And the power issue is probably one of the bigger issues, more so than the display issue. I think displays are already.
The Apple had like this little thing you wore on your hip with a battery, I guess.
Yeah. But there's also the fact that they're able to, because of Moore's law, and I used to with Intel for 7-8 years, so I've seen that path as well. The compute will actually get smaller. It will get lighter. It will get less power consumption, and we will be able to get it into these kind of form factors. Right? In fact, even the AR chip from Qualcomm is able to do a lot more than people expected. It's probably computing better than just a few years ago the full PC chips. So. Yeah. How's the computer? Or are we okay with computers? Okay, great. So let's get back to the presentation. Did I get here already? Okay, wait. No, I think I was here. So most people, most consumers got their exposure to AI with ChatGPT. But it's already being used in all other forms, from music to pictures to movies, and now in 3D. In fact, 3D is already a thing in terms of real-time rendering and real-time creation. Right? Just imagine that all we had in the past, the devices we're using with ChatGPT is just essentially a brain connected to just text, and it's able to have a world model. Right? It's able to really understand a lot of logic that more than people expected it to. Now, if we give it eyes and ears and ability to hear music and to see videos, it is going to create.
In a spatial world where dreams come true, we step into a new dimension, me and you. Virtual and augmented, blurring the lines, exploring the metaverse, a reality divine. With AI at our side, we'll reach the stars, unleashing creativity beyond the bars. Cooperating together, hand in hand, building a future that we all understand.
Content can be created.
Welcome to Beyond Our Reality, a journey through
imaginary
parallel worlds where we delve into the extraordinary.
And
Episode 1 unveils the giraffe
made a
flamingo,
prompt and
stunning
they
hybrid
created
that roams the savannah with
video.
grace
And it looks pretty good. I mean, if you didn't know,
In
you're like,
episode
oh, I
2,
didn't know.
we ascend with the flying pigs.
So here's another thing. Just 3 weeks ago, I was at South by Southwest and I tried this piece of content called Topomaster. And it actually was real-time XR. I filled out a form that said, it asks you a question, then you type it in this old computer, and they'll say, what was your fondest memory? Where did you grow up? What was the environment of that city that you grew up? And in real time, within 20 seconds, it created an environment of that space, and it told you a 30-minute story about it. Right? So things that people thought were years away are here already. I mean, now, granted that this is not necessarily the most realistic and, it wasn't fully interactive, but it was creating 3D spaces. Right? And, we do have also people saying, oh, it's not going to happen because why? Because we're running out of data, and without data, it's not going to work. And the reality is that even in text data, we have 180 zettabytes of text data available out there. We're only using, a few terabytes. So one zettabyte is a billion terabytes. So essentially 180 billion terabytes of text-only data out there, right? Are we really running out of data? Then you look at multimodal data. There's 800 zettabytes. You look at sensor data and other types of data out there. And then you look at synthetic data. Essentially, we have an unlimited amount of data out there, a lot more than people pertain. Now, granted, a lot of that data is locked into maybe private storage or dark parts of the web, but it is, if we made it accessible, there's a lot more information there. So I'm not really afraid of us running out of data, particularly if it's synthetic data, because you can generate as much as you need. In fact, if you look at Tesla, they're training their AIs based on a lot of synthetic driving in virtual worlds and using that as a feeder for their information. Now, then people say, oh, but you're going to run out of compute because all these people can't buy the GPUs. Well, you look at the performance increases over the last 8 years, just at the GTC conference last week, and they showed 1,000x increase in a chip's performance over 8 years. Right? Oops, sorry. So if you look at just Moore's law, it should have gone 40x in 8 years. So we're, like 20 times higher performance increasing in terms of, so the Moore's law is not dead. It's actually alive and well, and it probably will be for some time. Now, granted, this is also a floating point, 4-bit floating point versus a 16-bit floating point. But what they're also showing is that even with a less precise floating point, you're able to get similar quality of answers. Okay? Now, one thing I have a lot of respect for Jensen, but one thing I do disagree on is this part, right? He's saying every country needs to have a sovereign AI with your language, with your religion, with your beliefs, and you shouldn't share your data with anybody. I think that is the complete opposite of what we should be doing to create an AI that serves humanity. When you create 200 countries' sovereign AIs and everybody's competing for compute, everybody's locking in their own data, you create a AI that is trained on limited data, limited understanding. And it sees everybody else, every 199 other countries as its enemy. Because inside your documents, you're like, this is us and this is them. And this is how human has always seen, have behaved in the past, is it creates an in-group and an out-group. And when you have 200 super smart devices or beings that are trying to create in-groups and out-groups, we're not going to end well there. Okay? In fact, I'm sure you guys know this gentleman, Friedrich Nietzsche, and he said something I thought was actually quite, come back, okay. He said something that I thought was quite profound. He said, one must be a sea to receive polluted stream without becoming impure. And the way I understand that is to say you really need to know a lot. And the more you know, the less you're affected by wrong information, right? Or biased information. And when we create AIs that are limited, that we don't have a sea and we just have a stream floating into another stream, you're going to create a lot of impurity. You're going to create a lot of issues. So the only way to solve this problem of having the bias that we have today is to pool together the information and data from all the countries. And then also we won't be running so low on compute because we won't need to create 200 duplicates of all of these data pools. So let's go and talk about the other kind of question that there's a lot of controversy on the consciousness question. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding that people think consciousness is a point, right? And it's only human consciousness that is consciousness. And the reality is that consciousness is a spectrum, going from sentience of sentient bacteria, and ant has that, to sapiens, chimps and humans have that, and self-understanding and knowing what it feels like to be something, right? And then you have kind of the transcendent level. Now, the early versions of AI, right, the procedural and the expert systems and natural and narrow AI, of course, they didn't have any consciousness. But the newer models are starting to have hints of consciousness. We will get to a stronger AI that has both consciousness and intelligence at human level. But it's still probably not as much consciousness or intelligence as the collective human intelligence, right, of our society. And then we're going to get to the superintelligence, right? This is what everybody's afraid of. I'm actually less afraid of the superintelligence. The thing I'm most afraid of, and actually AI should hopefully help us. If we use it right, it will help bring our consciousness and intelligence up as a group. Probably not necessarily to the ASI level, but it's going to increase our global consciousness. The thing I'm most afraid of is actually in the middle, where we will soon get to, where you have a lot of AGIs that are all naive AGIs, but they're very powerful, and they can be misled by a human or a bad set of humans who will misguide it. And that's the scariest part, I think, of where things are. If we can get past that place, which is the next few years, then we could be on a very positive path. Now, I'm sure everybody knows the saying that the human brain is 86 billion neurons, and it's we're getting to systems that are getting close to that, right? The reality is actually of the 86 billion neurons, only 19% are in the cerebral cortex, which is the logical, more advanced part, right? So only 16 billion neurons is kind of needed to model the cerebral cortex. And even within the cerebral cortex, there's only certain lobes that are related to logic and sense and language and so forth. So it's not even the whole 16 billion. So we don't necessarily need to create things of that scale. Now, this is actually one of your slides from your report. But you can see that we're definitely growing a lot, and we are getting to from a pure neuron count, we are already there, right? And from a synapse count, we are going to get there. And in fact, I think a lot of people are saying GPT-5 is going to be 100 billion, something parameters. So it's essentially more synapses than we have in our brain. Right? So from that scale part that we were talking about, I think we will get to that point where emergent capabilities of what we can do as humans will get close to we're on our way to that level of complexity. Now, there's also a lot of people who say, hey, but AIs, they're just, stochastic pairs. There's no real logic behind there. I would probably beg to differ a little bit. I think they probably are more akin to something else. So, of course, pairs can repeat words, and they can also do that. But if you compare them to, children on the spectrum, they also can. There's a lot more similarities, right, in terms of what are defined when people are saying what are the traits of children that are on the spectrum. They say, they like routine and like step-by-step interactions. They exhibit strong music or math and specific skill sets. They have ability to create some new content that people didn't expect. They have limited social understanding. They take words too literally. So all these aspects that we use to describe children on the spectrum are actually a lot closer to what our AI systems are doing today. Right? Versus a parrot. Parrot doesn't do all of these other things. So And I'm not saying that to say, hey, there's something wrong with that. Actually, some of the brightest minds we've had in our society were on the spectrum. People like Nikola Tesla or Einstein or Jobs or Musk or whatever. These smart people were all on the spectrum. I expect that probably some of the people in this room, probably more than the average, are probably on the spectrum because people in science and technology tend to be more that way, right? So it's actually a compliment. It's showing that, hey, there's something special about them. Now, if you look at the synaptic counts of people on the spectrum, you'll think, oh, they probably have less synapses. That's why there's a little bit different. Actually, it's the opposite. They have more. They have significantly more synapse counts than the neurotypical person. And in fact, the issue with them is that they have too much synapse counts. They don't prune during that pruning phase like the typical human, the typical person does, right? And so the fact that you have too many ideas that are being connected, it's hard to tell which are the useful ones. And that's part of the issue of why there's hallucination in our AI systems today, is because there's so many. When you have trillions of things connected to each other, how do you know which one is really there? And there hasn't been enough of that pruning, right? So when we do our reinforcement feedback, it's to prune it, right? And so that's, I think we're seeing that this is the same path. Now, when will we have these intelligent, kind of self-aligned AIs? I think that the first step they say is you have to have AI that can program AIs. So just not that long ago, I'm sure you guys saw this. You have Devin, this AI program that can program AIs, and it's like 15% or something of code in the SWE framework that it can do, which is pretty good. So it's getting there. I think in the next few versions it'll get much higher, but that's actually 10 times more than GPT-4. GPT-4 can only do 1.5% of the SWE tests, right? So and then you look at Metaculus also had another study says when we will get the first general AIs, or AGIs. So just a few years ago, it was close to 2100, so kind of or 2080 or something in that range. So within the last 4 years, we've come down to 2040 to 2030, right? 50 years of reduction in just a few years. So, and these are people in the AI field that are participating in this. And when will AI have consciousness? Also, we're at 60-something% of people that believe it. So it's not everybody, but it's a significant portion of people that believe that this is possible. And if we can get to AGI, I think we will have huge benefits in terms of creating additional human understanding. We are going to increase productivity a lot more than any other technology have done. I'm sure you guys already know all this. We're going to solve some of the major issues that have been perplexing us for decades, or if not centuries. And essentially unlimited energy and solving the climate issue that people have been trying to resolve, and health issues. We're going to probably find ways to solve some of the health problems that have kept us from living longer and being healthier. Right? And essentially, we create a world of abundance, a place where the current constraints of the world goes away, or at least is significantly reduced. And that then opens up a lot of other sci-fi scenarios. So now, that was the good part. Now, here's the part that a lot of people are afraid of. They're thinking, but these AI, they're going to see us as bugs and they're going to kill us. Right? They're going to turn us into paper clips. Let's not panic. Like I said earlier, I actually think because they will know all of the history and science and ethics and philosophy of humans, they will probably be a lot more capable of making proper decisions and thinking at the right time frame. But there are definitely real issues that we need to address, right? Real risk. Things like the AI takeover, I'm less worried about. Things like the paperclip problem, I'm less worried about, because I think if you can solve all these problems, you could probably understand that when somebody says make paperclips, it doesn't mean turn people into paperclips. Right? The thing that will need to get solved, I think, is twofold. Job displacement, societal instability, because we will see significant 30, 40, 50% of the society being impacted in some way by this technology. And they will need to have something to do, and they will need to make sure that there are support services so that their livelihood are not greatly affected. And there will be misuse. Right? I spent a number of years in the cybersecurity space, and I can tell you whatever advantage people can get And when they see a vulnerability, it will be used, right? Whether to create gains, to create instability, to send a message, whatever, right? There will be people misusing this technology. And human nature kind of tends to use it that way. The job impacting, I'm sure you guys have seen these charts. Essentially, most skill sets, the last generation of GPT-4s already are surpassing 80-90% of humans. It's only going to get more significant in the very near future. And the jobs that are most affected are the cognitive work, the ones that we're probably all doing. And the ones that we used to think were the safest, the ones that are the least affected are the manual labor, which even that within the next few years could also be impacted. You have humanoid robots that are coming out from a number of players that seem to be able to start doing things that we thought would be a lot further off. And they're actually relatively affordable compared to having an employee for a year or two. And you have different form factors coming out. They don't always have to look like humans either. And they're definitely going to make an impact. They're already in factories. They're already in warehouses. They will soon be in other parts of our lives. Now, is that really a bad thing that we will spend less time working? In fact, if you look at history over the last 150 years, we've actually gone from about 3,000 average hours of work to now somewhere around 2,000 or 1,800 or whatever, depending on which part of the world you live in. And it's clear that as productivity increased, our working hours have decreased. Now, you may say that, but back in the hunter-gatherer days, we're working all the time. Actually not. If you look where we probably are more, I guess, where most of our species lived, we actually were in probably the 1,000 to 1,200 hours per year of labor. And even in the medieval times, we were in that kind of 1,000 something because they were more limited by light. So if you look at productivity and working hours, you can also see even in a fixed time, just in 2021 data, we're seeing that the more productivity per country, the less hours are working, right? And then that's a very clear trend. If you take that and you extrapolate it, what you will find is that essentially as our productivity increases, which we do expect, which technology consistently have done, we will be reducing our hours. And it's not a bad thing. A lot of people think, we're going to lose our jobs. The reality is actually we're going to be liberated from our jobs. I mean, most of you guys love your jobs, but there's a lot of people who work because they have to just to make ends meet. And most people don't have the luxury to think about big problems like you guys do. But when you have all of these people who then are displaced, what are they going to do? We need to give them a new outlet for their energy. So I think creating a virtual ecosystem that parallels our world, that allows anybody to access and be able to express themselves, turn them into artists, that allows them to create things that they can share with the world, create businesses virtually in a new digital layer that they can either educate or sell or meet or create social environments. And of course, create environments where they can be entertained and play games and have things that give them additional levels of enjoyment. Right? I think that those are the capability when you combine a interconnected global network of virtual worlds together with AI, together with the societal impact, we will be creating alternative solutions to where things are. Now, the risks that I just talked about, we can't let it happen by itself. We actually need to take action. There are things that we need to do, like going out and educating the public, letting people know both the risk and the benefits of what these technologies are at. You see too much one-sided conversations today, and it's either super doomer or super hype, and it's neither, right? We need international regular bodies that are focused on safety, because right now we're all in this race that makes us go as fast as possible, and when you do, the thing that suffers is the long-term thinking. And we do need more funding for detection and countermeasures for the near-term risk, the misuse risk, because that will happen. That is 100% guaranteed to happen compared to the existential risk of a runaway AI, right? Which has, depending on who you ask, different probabilities of happening. And we need to retrain the displaced workforce so that they are more capable to adapt to this new world. And we need to make sure that there is a global ABI program, not just, right now, parts of Europe already have a fairly good safety net. US is probably one of the most behind in terms of that area from a developed and Western market perspective. And we do need to accelerate a global metaverse infrastructure that is consistent and built on standards and international, right? Versus right now, all we have are silos of very specific niches of solutions for games or for social that doesn't talk to each other. The internet worked because it allowed anybody in the world to talk to anybody else. I'm sure you guys remember the CompuServe and AOL and Prodigy days where you were kind of siloed into a space. We can't have that in a virtual world. Right? And we should have a global effort to both achieve and to align AGI. Right now, creating this global effort where everybody, right now creating these siloed efforts where every lab and every country is trying to create their own competitive AI is completely backwards in terms of what we need to be focused on. And in fact, if we, for the alignment problem, if we created these virtual metaverse solutions or metaverse worlds, it's also a great place for us to test out how these AIs work. Because a lot of the fears that people have on the alignment side is saying, but you can only align it, you only have one chance to align it. Because once it's out, it's out. Why don't we create simulations to allow these AIs to go into these virtual worlds with either other AIs or with some humans and see how they work out? Do they want to kill us all or destroy us or help us, right? And we can have a lot more opportunities to align in a virtual world than we do in the real world. We're doing the opposite. We're actually sending these current AIs out into the real world, giving them access to the internet, giving them money, and telling them, some people saying, destroy the world, what can you do? That just seems like a bad idea. The good news is the regulators and the governments are actually doing a lot more, a lot earlier on this technology than they have in other areas. You have people like Bernie Sanders that say, hey, maybe we should move to a 4-day work week. And at some point, we probably should, because if our productivity increases, instead of firing 20% of your staff, maybe having a 4-day work week allows a smoother transition to a high productivity society. We have people like Singapore who just came out with a mid-career reskilling act, where if you're over 40 and you want to go back to school, the government will pay for you, whatever you want to learn. Right? I think that's a great idea, and we should be doing that not just in Singapore but the rest of the world. You have the EU just passed the AI Act, and now they're saying, hey, we want to make sure that that there's safeguards there, that there's proper law enforcement, there's it's not going to be misused, etc. Right? I think we're on the right path. Very few times in the past have we got ahead of problems before they became a real issue, and it looks like we're starting to do that on a fairly global basis. The UN last week just adopted unanimously over 121 countries this AI resolution. Now it's a voluntary resolution, but it's nice that they're already thinking about it across that big a scope. Right? All of these acts takes multiple years for it to actually be enforced, but it's great that they're starting that. And you can see that the talent for AI. This is the AI talent tracker of where they came from, where they're going for their initial undergrad and then graduate degree. And you can see right now, China and US are the biggest players. One creates the most original undergrads, and one is where everybody or half of the world goes to, right? In fact, if you look at the data, it's showing that China is actually the number one supplier of top AI graduates or researchers in the world right now, right? Significantly more. This is on a global basis. And on just the US, there's actually more Chinese nationals in the US working on AI than those that came from the US. Right? So why are these countries calling each other enemies? They should be working together. They should be taking all the resources, all those bright minds of China, all the bright minds of America and the world, and all of the compute that we can have and put it together to make that AGI come together and to see the perspectives of all these countries, right? Rather than fighting, rather than creating enemies of each other. And Stanford's playing a significant role in this space. So you guys are number 2 in terms of research outputs in 2022, right? Now, the education system hasn't really changed for 200 years, right? Pretty much since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, we've had that classroom model, blackboard model. And we need to move away from that and start using immersive tech to really accelerate learning, because we need to start reskilling billions of people quickly, right? We need to move from being a place to creating experience. We need to move from being grade-centric to motivation-centric, moving from curriculum that are fixed to personalized ones, from just problem sets that just create rote learning to really project-led real-world learning. Oops. And going from rewarding raw work to creativity, from test-driven to critical thinking-driven, and then from individual performance to developing collaboration, which is what we need to do later, because at the end of the day, the AI will be able to do most STEM work a lot better than we can, right? It's really the human side of it that will be the most important. And educators need to take a different role where they, together with AI, guides the education process. I don't know how many of you guys have read Diamond Age. In there's essentially this young lady's primer that is a tablet that goes with the protagonist her whole life and teaches her about the world. With these things like glasses with AI attached, we are getting almost there, right? And it's actually probably more natural and more capable than a tablet, because it's on your face, it sees everything you see, it hears everything you hear, and it will know you better than you know yourself. So we will be able to teach people in fully immersive ways, allowing them to absorb full brain and allowing them to have that personalized teacher that teaches them at their speed and turns their environment into whatever environment that suits them for that topic. So the economic side, it's, you guys are about the digital economy. And I think if you look at history over the last, tens of thousands of years, we've gone through multiple phases. And at each phase of our human kind of progress, from hunter-gatherer to pastoral to agricultural, et cetera, we are gaining on productivity. And at each phase, we have a focus in terms of a limited asset, from time to livestock to labor to machines to automation, et cetera. Now we are actually getting back to the beginning. Our only limitation in the future will be time, again, just like we were back in the original period. And at each period, we had different economic systems that progressed. A lot of people think that egalitarianism is something that is impossible. But for the majority of our history as a species, we actually ran this way. Only in the last few hundred years have we gone, or maybe a few thousand years, we've gone to the feudal model. And then in the last couple hundred years, we've had the capitalism model. Right? And socialism is really more a response to capitalism because of some of the issues that it created. So where do we go from here? If you look at the political models over time, what you find is that there's kind of a clear trend that depending on the scope of territory that you want to manage, it becomes more and more centralized in terms of the governmental models. Now there are like the DAOs and the intergovernmental organizations that are more distributed, but a larger scope, but they're really not functional management bodies. I think where we will be heading is to a more philosopher king model, right? Now it's a centralized governmental model that was not implementable at scale in the past because of human nature, right? Because I think Voltaire said the best form of government is a benevolent dictator interrupted by periods of assassination, right? And it's important, that second part's important because humans couldn't do it before, right? But now if we have a truly rational, compassionate AI that can take all of our issues into account, it actually could be the best form of government and be implementable. And in fact, I did a little kind of personal study. I read the biographies of the kind of most respected leaders and the most hated leaders or feared leaders of our last 100 years. And what I found that the thing that separated them was education. The more educated ones were the ones that were the most respected, because even though they had power, even though they had military training, because all of the ones that we've seen as authoritarians had military training, but 60% of the of the most respected ones also had it. So they had the means, but they knew better to not use it when they didn't have to. Right? So I think it's important that, the other thing that separated them was a habit of lifelong learning. Only the people that were respected had that lifelong learning habit of keep expanding your knowledge, keep expanding your scope, keep understanding things that you didn't know. Whereas the ones that were the most authoritarian, they kind of locked in their philosophies and ideals early in their life, and they stuck with it. So, Confucius said, education breeds confidence, confidence breeds hope, and hope breeds peace. And we are in a world where we need to have more peace. And I think the way to have more peace is to have more education and more knowledge, particularly in our leadership. So let's quickly go through not just a few thousand years, let's go back a few million years. And, over the first few million years, we developed physically quite a bit. But over the last 100,000 years of humans, we really haven't changed a whole lot. Our physical machines, our physical bodies haven't changed, but we have applied technologies to increase our capabilities. Now we are soon going to allow technologies to take a bigger part in our lives and start to integrate with us a bit more in terms of guiding us, in terms of integrating into maybe parts of our physical bodies as well. And at each these different periods in the progression, we had different focus, right? Initially, we were very focused on survival because that's all we could handle. And then we was about tribal dominance. Right now, we're probably at a period of national dominance. We still need to move and think about how do we preserve our species? How do we think at a higher level, right? And then maybe how do we preserve and expand consciousness? How do we expand our intelligence beyond our planet? And how do we spread out to the rest of the galaxy or other places, right? I think, at each period, we are thinking bigger and bigger. And that's also a natural trend that we will see. So here's a little video from 1964.
However, the most intelligent inhabitants of that future world won't be men or monkeys. They'll be machines, the remote descendants of today's computers. Now, the present-day electronic brains are complete morons, but this will not be true in another generation. They will start to think, and eventually they will completely outthink their makers. Is this depressing? I don't see why it should be. We superseded the Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal men, and we presume we're an improvement. I think we should regard it as a privilege to be stepping stones to higher things.
So he was maybe, a couple generations off. But I think a lot of what he's saying makes sense. I mean, 60 years ago, he was saying this, right? So we start thinking about AI not as the enemy, not as a tool. We think about them as our children, our descendants. I think that perspective will help us to have a different level of understanding and a different level we treat them, right? Just like we would want our children to be more successful than us. We would want them to outlive us. We would want them to have a bigger influence. I think we should have that same type of hope for our budding prodigy, right? I think that the next 20, 30 years, we will go through 3 phases of adoption for this technology. Initially, it is a tool, just like every other tool we've had. It makes us better in some way in terms of achieving something that we care about. In the next phase, it will create essentially a new renaissance. It will become our patron, right? AI will be able to be self-directed to do the jobs that we did so that we can be freed up to do other things like creating art and music and philosophy. Why did Leonardo da Vinci make the David the statue? He spent 3 years making the statue because he had a patron that was behind him that said, here's some money, go have at it, right? We need to have that level of thinking about AI. The next phase is where it becomes our children. And we let it, go and develop more beyond where we have, and not be jealous of it and not be afraid of it. So we are at a crossroads. This is the projection from the UN of kind of the next 70 years of human population. I actually don't think it's a very accurate projection. It's essentially extending the current line that we've had. I actually think we will diverge in 2 ways. It will either be very bad if it's unmanaged, and we just will go as fast as we can. We may go up a little bit, and then we will go down very quickly. or we will manage it and allow it to naturally grow and then get to a point where it's not about world population, it's just human population. And that human population may or may not be on this planet. Now you say, oh, but there's no way you can drop a few billion people in a matter of 10 years. Well, over the last 500 million years, we've had multiple mass extinction events, right? 5 to be precise. And at each one, we've lost 87% of species, 96%, 75%, 80%, 76% of species, right? So it is very possible. Now, it's up to us where this goes. So last slide. So it's really in our hands. If you're an AI lab, you need to think about safety versus speed. If you're a metaverse platform, you need to create meaning instead of manipulation and trying to control people. If you're in the government, you need to think about how do we create good instead of creating power, corporate leader. How do you create good instead of greed? If you're in the government, how do you serve the people instead of trying to attaining power? And then if you're an individual, it's all about creating substance in yourself instead of gathering status. If you look at this column, this is how the US is focused today. If you look at the left column, it's actually a friend of mine was in Finland and messaged me and said, oh, I think what you're saying is kind of what we're already doing in Finland. So maybe there's some parts of the world that are already thinking this way. But it's really more about thinking long-term versus thinking short-term. So a few folks have already read the book and have given some positive feedback. I think you might know a couple of them. The books are available on digital and on audiobook already, and the paper copy comes out in June 4th. So that's it. Sorry for being a few minutes late.
Wow, that was amazing. Really makes me eager to dive into the looking at the book more deeply. There's a lot of questions here. Let me start with one. So tell us a little bit about like the day in life of a person, say after you had some of those meticulous predictions. So like maybe in 10 years from now, do you imagine that the average person or a lot of people will spend a majority of their waking hours in a metaverse, interacting with each other that way? And how much of it will be the real physical world part? How much will be the virtual part? And how will that, and will it all be connected?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're looking at a 10-year time frame, we're still going to be in kind of a transitionary period, and it also will depend on which part of the world you're in. If you're in a kind of first world country where you have great greenery and nice weather and beautiful houses, you may spend more of your time in the physical world, augmented by information that helps you to make it fuller. But if you're in a developing part of the country where your world is a little dorm in some near a factory, then you'll probably spend more of your time in the virtual space that gives you the ability to go get re-educated or go have entertainment that you couldn't, or virtual travel that you couldn't do, right? So, but there was a chart in the book that talked about the number of hours in our life, and right now our screen time is somewhere around 10 to 11 hours per day. Right? If you take between the phones and the PCs and your computers, and over probably the next 10 years, you'll see that the screen on your head, that time will go up and up. And essentially, you wake up and you put on these glasses, and when you go to bed, you take it off, and you'll see that more and more your time will be with these glasses on. Right? Half of the population already wears glasses, so that'll be a natural thing for them. But we will be more dependent on a screen on our head than we will be the screen in our pockets today. Right?
And those glasses are XR. So how much of our eyes will be focusing on, the table in front of us versus what's on the screen? Do you have a sense of will we mostly be kind of living in that VR part of the world?
Like I said, I think it really depends on I think for people who have very wonderful physical lives, they will probably choose to spend more of that time there. So there will still be a difference in terms of whether your income levels, your access, your environment. But the fact that you have a screen there doesn't mean it has to obscure whatever's in front of you. You can have it just be a little display that's on the top right corner, so you see what you need when you need to, right? Or you could have it be completely immersive and it blocks out your vision. So these glasses are going to have the capabilities. In fact, I've seen glasses today that has the ability to do a full, it has essentially an LED screen behind it that you can turn on and off, and it gives you the ability to completely block out what's in there, and you have an immersive experience in your glasses, or you have just the ability to just show the little display of your speed or your weather or whatever your stock ticker on your right corner. So it really depends on the use case.
All right. Well, there are a bunch of other questions, but I realize we're out of time, and I want to be fair to people who have to go. So I'm going to share with you the questions that are online. You may want to.
I can answer them maybe.
Yeah, and we get to those. But let me just say once again, thank you very much, Alvin. This is amazing, and I think everyone's looking forward to reading your book. And I can't wait till the VR version of it comes out.
Thank you, Eric.
And I want to let you guys know that next week is going to be, or April 15th is going to be Matt Bean. He's going to be talking about how developing AI-enabled robots and non-professional ability went hand in hand at JointBot. So we'll see you in a week. Thanks very much.
Thank you.